Hello, I've got with me Steve Burgess. Steve is author of 2 books, Famous Past Lives and The Power of Past Life Regression. Steve began practicing hypnotherapy in 1992, initially working almost exclusively with smokers, where he was highly successful. He is a practitioner of a number of therapies and techniques. Steve was awarded title of Master Hypnotist by the UK Guild of Hypnotist Examiners in 2004 and is accredited by the General Hypnotherapy Register and a Senior Qualified Hypnotherapy Practitioner. So thanks very much for coming along, Steve, or zooming along. And welcome to the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Anne. Thank you.
So we're going to talk about hypnotherapy and also your more unique subject of past life regression, where I think it's fair to say that you are a little bit of an expert in. But just beginning from the idea of hypnotherapy. Now, I do hypnotherapy as well with my clients, and often there's a bit of a fear. People really struggle with the concept, or a lot of people do. So how would you explain the difference between what most people see, which is stage hypnosis, and hypnotherapy? I always think the clue's in the title a little bit, but what would you say about that?
Okay. I mean, first of all, one thing we always try to do as hypnotherapists, or aim to do, is to get over how natural hypnosis is. So in the mind of many people in the general public, hypnosis is a shock horror thing. They've seen, as you say, stage hypnotists, or they've seen stuff on Hollywood movies, which is just pure bullshit in most cases, because hypnosis is completely natural. Now, what hypnosis isn't, it isn't falling asleep. So when people see the stage hypnotist go sleep and click the fingers and everybody flops down, those people are not asleep. They're still hearing him because they heard. Usually it's a him, but they're still hearing the hypnotist. Because if they were asleep, they wouldn't hear anything. And then you'd have just 10 people laid on the stage snoring and there's no act. So hypnosis isn't sleep. It isn't going into a coma where you don't know what's going on. It isn't going under anesthetic. And people often use the word under with regard to hypnosis, which is completely the wrong word, because hypnosis is a form generally of relaxation. And so you don't go under a relaxed state, you go into a relaxed state, as you know. So the trance, and that's our jargon word, is completely natural. And we all go into trance at least 24 times a day. I often say to my clients when I first meet them, have you had any hypnosis before? And they say, no, I haven't. I've never been hypnotized. And I immediately say, I'm sorry, you're lying to me. And they say, what? So look, we go into trance 24 times a day. Do you drive a car? Yes. Excuse me. In that case, you've been in trance, because anybody who drives a car who's been on automatic pilot is in hypnosis. We all go into hypnosis when we're drifting into sleep, when we're drifting out of sleep, when we daydream. So hypnosis is totally natural. And unfortunately, what has happened is that the stage hypnotists have sort of created a bit of an aura, if you like, a mistaken aura around hypnosis, which gives people the wrong impression. They think that they're going to be they're not going to know what's happening. They're going to be under the control of the hypnotist. And I suppose in the early days of hypnosis, of course, which people were mesmerized, and hypnosis grew out of Mesmer's what was called animal magnetism, where they'd be doing all sorts of passes with the hands and doing all sorts of these flamboyant gestures. Nowadays, we've got it right. We just talk about relaxing to a client. They close their eyes, they go inside themselves, and they naturally go into trance. So I'll be honest, I think most hypnotherapists don't like stage hypnosis because it can be damaging, and it can be very damaging, although the stage hypnotist will never tell you this. And so for most hypnotherapists, we don't like the concept of stage hypnosis. I mean, it's, we spend all our lives putting people back together, and a stage hypnotist is up there humiliating people. It just goes against the grain, I think, for most hypnotherapists. So yes, the as you say, the clue is in the title. Hypnotherapy. We go into hypnosis, we go into an inner state, and the therapy is what we do to get our clients better. And the range of issues that we work with this hypnotherapist, of course, is immense. Virtually any issue that a person has, any problem that a person has, can probably be helped by hypnotherapy. So it's just so damn powerful.
Absolutely. And again, to somebody who has never experienced this in terms of seeking a professional help in any way with hypnotherapy, what benefit does trance provide, as in what happens, if you like, with the mind that makes it more able then to put it whatever way you like? Some people might say heal, some people might say correct something that's not right. I like to look upon it as creating solutions. So why would somebody do that as opposed to, let's say, seeking what I tend to refer to as conscious therapy, which is one-to-one talking with a counsellor? Why would someone go down the route of trance and hypnotherapy?
I mean, conscious therapy, talking therapy is very good. We know that, and it can really help a lot of people, especially people who just need to let go, who need to vent. Unfortunately, it often isn't deep enough, and the depth of hypnotherapy is primarily because we're using the deeper mind. So the mind is very much like an iceberg. The tip of the iceberg above the waves is the conscious thinking mind, but beneath the surface of the waves is the vast bulk of the iceberg and the subconscious mind, the deep inner mind. In percentage terms, this is about 0.001%, and this is about 99.99%. So this is the engine room of the mind. So when we're working in trance, we're using the engine room of the mind, the powerhouse of the mind. So it has to be far more powerful than just talking with the tip of the mind. And I mean, a few years ago, some mind researchers came up with some figures. I don't know how they came up with these figures, but they published these figures. They said that the conscious thinking mind takes on board 50 pieces, 50 bits of information every second, 50 bits. The subconscious mind takes on board 11 million pieces of information every second. So we're working with the engine room of the mind. It has to be far more powerful than just a standard talking therapy. And often it makes releasing a problem easier, because so often we have sort of barriers and resistances which can stop us from really entering fully into therapy. Well, once we go into trance, those resistances tend to dissolve generally. And we let the subconscious do the work, and it usually does the work extremely elegantly, because our subconscious wants us to be well. You know, in one way, the subconscious is like a computer that can be programmed. But actually, I believe it's much greater than that. And as I've got older, and as I've been doing this job for it was 29 years ago, a couple of weeks ago, that I saw my first client. So I've been doing this for 29 years, and I've grown to the belief that we all have a higher self, which is a somewhat esoteric belief. And I believe that our subconscious mind either is our higher self or is intimately connected to the higher self. So the subconscious has an amazing wisdom. It knows what the client wants and needs. And if we allow it to do the work, and the style of therapy that I do, which is the regression therapy mainly, that allows the subconscious to control the work and to take us where we need to go, the client gets better.
Yeah, I've always found the regression work, I always look on it as almost like it's like the foundation. If you can get that foundation right, then it might be just putting the little top and tail on everything. But the regression work is the core, because that links so strongly to somebody's belief system, doesn't it?
Well, it does. And the regression model is that all of our problems as human beings, all of our issues, come from locked in feelings and emotions from past traumas. All of our issues. And anybody who has read Louise Hay and You Can Heal Your Life, with her idea that all physical problems, all illness has emotional causes. will understand this concept. So when we're working in regression, we're working on the emotional causes of a problem. And it's easier to get to those emotional causes when we're in trance than it is than when we're just sort of wide awake talking about things.
What would you say to somebody who, again, maybe has no experience of this and is concerned that they won't be able to access any memories? Because that's quite a common concern as well.
Well, like any therapy, nothing works 100% for everybody. And there are a few people who just don't seem to regress very well. It doesn't suit everybody. It suits most people. But most people can get into the memories. And of course, if we can't get into the past, then most therapists have got other tools that we will use and hopefully help the client using our other tools. But most people can get into the memories, and they get into them in different ways. So as you know, there are some people who are very visual. So if they're, for example, in a past life, they will be seeing what's happening in the past life. They'll be saying, I'm walking down a cobble street, and there's horses and carts, and there's a man with a top hat, and et cetera, et cetera. And whereas some people explore the past lives what we call non-visually. So I'm non-visual. I can't see pictures in my imagination to save my life. But when I go into trance and I go into a past life, I tend to experience it what we call kinesthetically, which means that we're feeling the past life. And then the feelings come through. And to be honest, the most important thing is releasing the feelings. So it doesn't matter if we don't get a narrative about what's happening in the past. The most important thing is that the client goes into the past traumas, feels them, releases them, and then they get better.
Yeah. I mean, on the whole, I've found most people are fairly visual. I'm actually very similar to you in that I'm more kinesthetic. And if I'm doing any type of regression personally, I will just get information that flows into my mind. And when I did the past life training, it was a little bit like that. I couldn't see anything, but I would be able to say, well, this is happening because I'm just getting this information. It seems a bit odd because you're beginning to effectively form a picture in your mind of what's going on. And you do question yourself consciously a little bit and think, am I making this up? But then you realize you're not, because you wouldn't make it up. No. And you just got to trust, haven't you? The information that flows, you just got to trust it, that it's got a point to it. Now, you mentioned past life, and that's more of what we're going to talk about really today, but we wanted to intro a little bit generally. So why would past life regression help somebody resolve an issue in their current life?
Good question. Where do we start? Have we got 3 hours? So the cause of all of our problems are locked in feelings and emotions from past traumas. That's the concept. That's the regression model. And basically, although we'll talk probably mainly about past lives, there are 3 areas that we use regression into. This lifetime. So most of us have got emotional baggage from this life, most of us. So because we do a lot of work back in childhood, healing childhood traumas. Sometimes we will rebirth clients, we'll take them back through the birth experience and release birth trauma. We can go back into the womb and explore trauma in the womb. I remember years ago, I had a client who, when he was in the womb as a child, his father tried to abort him by punching his mother in the stomach while she was pregnant. Now, in the therapy sessions, I mean, he went into this in a big way. It was rolling around and crying and screaming whilst he relived his father trying to kill him. And of course, that was big stuff to release. It was quite dramatic to see. So this lifetime, we all carry baggage from this life. Past lives, it appears, whether the world wants to understand this is immaterial in my view nowadays. We've lived many lifetimes before this life. And I think the evidence is overwhelming that this is the case because of all the past life therapists who are around the world who are coming up with these sessions. And sometimes the sessions where clients get information which they wouldn't have known in any other way unless it was a past lifetime. And the third area that we regress is what are called ancestral traumas. And these are basically traumas we inherit from our ancestors in our bloodline, from our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, etc., etc. So regression is really into those three areas. The past life tends to be the biggest because we tend to bring in so much stuff from past lifetimes. If we have lived many lives, then there are certain past lives which contain severe traumas. And those traumas are in our subconscious, in this energy field, and they tend to come out under certain circumstances. Sometimes, as with a phobia, the fears can be triggered. So it may be, let's say, that somebody has a phobia of vomit, emetophobia, a very common phobia. And we may find that in a past life they died horribly, maybe of a plague or something, or some sort of sickness, and they were vomiting all the time. And so the subconscious says, well, sick equals death in this life. And therefore we are being sick now, we're going to die. And so it sets up this phobia of sickness. It doesn't want them to die because the subconscious can be very literal. Or it can be general sort of stuff, like an anxiety state, which is just there all the time. And I mean, for example, how I got into past life therapy, maybe I can share this story with you, I hadn't trained in past life regression. We'd looked at it a little bit on my initial training course. But I set up as a standard hypnotherapist, taking people into trance, feeding the subconscious with suggestions and visualizations. And that was what I was doing for about 6 months and sort of getting results. And then one day, a young boy, he was about 24, came to me with a serious anxiety state. I mean, he was in a very bad way. He sat in front of me in the chair in my office, and he was shaking and hyperventilating and stuttering and stammering his words and moving all the time. He couldn't sit still. And he was obviously in a bad way. And I said, well, so how long have you been like this for? And he said, well, all my life I've been anxious, all of my life. But the last few years, it's just got worse and worse. And since the children came along, I'm just like this all the time. He said, I can't work. I've had to give my job up. I sit at home all day just shaking. My wife is sick and tired of it. She said she's going to divorce me if I don't get any better. The tablets the doctor's given me made me worse, which is often the case with these things. And I don't know what to do. So there was nothing that caused this anxiety. But it had always been through his life, and then it had got worse and worse until it was peaking now. So, okay, I thought, well, I took him into trance. I guided him into hypnosis, and he started to relax. And he relaxed very nicely. Within about 5 minutes, he was very soft. His breathing was deep and regular. And he was in a very nice trance state. And I'm thinking, okay, this is just a standard hypnotherapy session now. I'll tell him just let go of the anxieties. We'll do some suggestion work. And then all of a sudden he started to shake, and he was laid in the chair shaking, and suddenly he started to half whisper and half talk and half shout, and he's saying, no, hide in here, bring the children, hide the children. All the time his body's shaking, and he's getting more and more agitated, and he's going, shush, no, quiet, no, quiet. No. And then he started to scream and yell, no. And he just laid in the chair. And it was 10 times bigger than what I've demonstrated there, and it was 10 times bigger. He was screaming, and he just went bah, completely quiet. My heart was beating. I thought, what on earth is going on here? I said, what's happening? How are you? And he said, oh, I feel wonderful. I feel absolutely wonderful. I feel so calm. Oh, I've never felt like this in my life. I feel so relaxed. I thought, well, I don't. So what was happening? He said it was weird. It was like I was in another body in another time. There were soldiers coming looking for me and my family. We were trying to hide, and then they found us, and then they shot us all. I think they were Nazis. What was that about? I said, well, I think you were in a past life. I mean, I knew about past life. I think you're in a past life. But how do you feel? He said, I just feel wonderful. I'm completely relaxed. It's just gone. It's completely gone. And, and his problem was fixed in 10 minutes. And that hit me in the face. I thought, why don't I know about this? This is important. Bear in mind, I hadn't guided him into a past life. I hadn't mentioned past lives. And this is 29 years ago. And not many people in the world talked about past life regression, not in the UK. But why don't I know about this? And so I started to research it and got information from America and started to play with it a little bit and use it more. And then found that if it was offered to the subconscious as a possibility for healing, so often the subconscious would take the client into a past lifetime. And I always say, I don't tell my clients, I think there's been a past life here that's caused your problems. No, we don't do that. I don't know where it's coming from, but the subconscious knows. And if we take the client into trance, and I use a technique where the subconscious uses a hand or a finger to signal yes or no to my questions, we find that the subconscious does the work. And so often, especially with past life regression, it's death trauma. So it's so often the death in a past life which causes the trauma in this lifetime. And by releasing the death trauma, the problem gets better. So it's very much sort of A to B. We have B is the problem. A is what has caused it. You don't catch an anxiety state like flu. You don't sit next to somebody on the bus who's got a phobia and you pick up their phobia. No, the phobia is the problem. What has caused it? The depression is the problem. What has caused it? The physical problem, the sickness, the illness, the cancer, the lack of confidence, the sexual problem, the relationship issue. What has caused it? And A is the cause. If we can go back in regression to the cause and release that, release the energies, then the problem gets better.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes people struggle to get their head around the fact that something, you mentioned depression. I can remember one client saying to me, but I'm clinically depressed, as if that was a barrier to them releasing the depression. And I think also with more physical health issues, such as you mentioned, cancer, people don't want to feel that there is, they almost feel like they're then taking responsibility for the illness. It's like, and they don't want to go down that route, because it's almost like saying, I remember somebody saying to me, so I caused this. And obviously you don't deliberately cause something. It is a reaction because you need healing in some way, shape or form. So how would you sort of help somebody in their mindset to understand that connection between something like depression or something like a physical issue, and that yes, you can resolve these things within your subconscious mind and you can live a really good life? Because I think also some people I feel like I'm throwing lots at you now, but struggle to think, I could live a normal life, I could live a good life.
Well, this is where, if this isn't controversial stuff enough already, this is where we become even more controversial. But I make no bones about this. Basically, what I'm sharing now is based on 29 years experience over 15,000 therapy sessions. So lots of research, lots of work done. Depression, for example. The first thing I'll do is explain to the client that they have been told a lie by their doctor. The doctor is telling them, in most cases, that depression is caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain. Complete lie. There is no independent scientific evidence to support that in any way, shape, or form. It was a lie that was created by drug companies in the 1970s to sell antidepressants. Yes, there may be a chemical imbalance in the brain, but something is causing that. Depression, in most cases, is an emotional state. The emotion that causes depression that's locked in is anger. So depression is usually caused by locked in anger. Now, anger is a composite emotion. What that means is underneath the anger, there's always another emotion going on. It's usually sadness. And this is why depression is characterized by melancholy, but because the sadness is underneath the anger. So I'll share that with them. They can go away, they can research till they're blue in the face. They will never find independent scientific evidence that depression is caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain. Do you know there are some antidepressant tablets? If you look at the list, the information on the tablets when you open the pack, and it gives you this information leaflet, and it usually says depression may be caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain. Hang on just a minute, maybe. Well, I thought you said it was. Well, it may be, but it may not be. Well, it may be. So, well, it may be caused by looking at somebody with a red hat then. You know, I mean, we can just make this stuff up. Okay, there can be physical reasons why somebody gets depressed, such as candida, for example, which can cause depression. But in most cases, it's an emotional state. Cancer is an emotional subject, unfortunately. It's a complicated issue. You know, there are many ways to cure cancer. Unfortunately, we are bombarded. Big Pharma is so powerful that everything is about tablets and with cancer slash and burn. You know, the success rates of chemotherapy are very low, and the whole idea of, you know, killing off cells in the body in order for the body to survive is pretty ludicrous. And there are many people around the world who are specialists in cancer who are using much more insightful therapies to get people better. But of course, this is all controversial stuff. In my opinion, there is always emotional causes underneath in any physical problem. Now, I am not for 1 minute sitting here suggesting that I can cure cancer. That isn't what this is about. But the work I do can be part of a package that can help somebody to actually cure the cancer. So they've got to look at the nutrition. They've got to look at, you know, the stuff that's going in the body, perhaps parasites, etc., etc. But for example, I had a lady a couple of years ago in Oslo, and she had lip cancer of the lip. And we found that there were actually 2 past lives which were causing the emotional causes for the lip cancer. In both of the past lives, well, in one of the past lives, she was raped and then not allowed to tell anybody about the rape because she was living in some sort of African tribe in the past life. And if she'd have told anybody, then she would have been shunned and she would never have got a husband. She was a young woman. So she had to suppress the horror of what had happened, suppress the lip. Lip is about speaking out. She wasn't able to speak out. So we released that past life and the trauma of it. The second past life, she was quite a well-to-do, noble woman, a young woman, maybe a teens. And she had a servant who was seductive around her, a male servant. And being a teenager, she sort of misread his messages, and he misread her messages because she would tease him. And then one day he wanted to kiss her. And of course, this several hundred years ago was completely not to do. So she was horrified, pushed him away. And then she thought, well, I better not tell my father because he'll go mad. But she told, I think, a friend or a sister. And then they told the father. And then the father executed this servant in front of her. So again, we've got this speaking out. She spoke out about something and there was a death. So we released both of those past lives. We cleared the trauma, and the lady completely changed her lifestyle. She had some kinesiology. I think it was about 5 months after we finished the sessions in Oslo, she sent me a message, an email. She said, I've just been to the hospital, Steve. I've had all the tests. They cannot find a trace of cancer in my body. So we've got to work on emotional causes to release physical problems. And, so what I tend to do if a client is sort of skeptical, I'll share my stories with them. You know, the clients who came to me with a physical problem and they got better. The clients who came with depression who got better. You know, I had one client, and this is one of the stories in the new book, The Power of Past Life Regression, that she had depression. She was a counsellor, a talking therapist with severe depression. And there were actually, I think it was 8 past lives that were causing the depression, which is quite a lot of past lives. And the different levels of trauma. So in one of the past lives, she was a Victorian flower seller, very poor young woman in Victorian London, living on the edge, desperately trying to sell flowers every day, getting more and more sick, very little nutrition. One day she was so sick on the streets that she dragged herself to a quack doctor somewhere in London. He took her in and he then raped her and killed her. In another past life, she was a young woman who had a child, a young boy, who died, and she never got over the death of that child. In another past life, she was a male soldier in a battle, and he was a coward. He ran away from the battle and then died. So all of these traumas were just locked in the subconscious. And when we, over several sessions, went through the past lives, we released the traumas, the depression just went. It just went. And another example of sometimes how quick this can be. Okay, hypnotherapy is a radical therapy. Regression is fast, but it can take quite a lot of sessions sometimes. But it's usually a damn sight faster than psychoanalysis, which can go on for years and often with no benefit at all. But I had one lad was brought to me with migraines, and I think he was 13, and he was getting migraines every few weeks. He was missing school every few weeks, very intelligent lad. And he actually was recommended to see me because of another lady who'd been to see me with a severe back pain, and that was quite a story as well. So this lad comes 13. Bear in mind, he's 13. He doesn't have any knowledge about past lives. What's that about? And his mum sat in on the session. She sat behind me watching. So I guided him into trance, and his subconscious said that there were, again, I think it was 8 past lives causing the migraines. Now, my experience with migraines is that they are usually caused by deaths in past lives where there has been blows to the head. Okay, now I don't say this to this lad when he comes to me, not at all, because then I'm leading him. I don't do that. Guided him into trance, 8 past lives, and he was a fast worker. And we cleared all 8 past lives in one session, just over an hour it took. And he went from one past life to another. So the first past life, I can't remember the full order of them, but the first past life, let's say, it was fairly recent. He was a man driving along in a car, and suddenly a truck comes to the side, smashes into his car, he smashes his head, smashes his head on the steering wheel, dead. And then he went straight into the next past life, where he was a man standing in a garden, and his wife was having an affair with his best friend, and she wanted rid of him. So she came up behind him with a spade, smashes him round the back of the head, dead. And he went into the next past life, where he was a warrior fighting in battle, and somebody hits him with an axe in his head, dead. And he went into the next past life, where he was a man in a bar brawl, and he got bashed to the floor, and then they were kicking him in the head, dead. And he went into the next past life, where he was an old man walking up an old wooden steps, and the step gave way, and he falls and lands on his head, dead. And he went into the next past life, where he was a boy at school, about 6 years old, who he faced up to the class bully, and the school bully, because he kicked the school bully, and the school bully gets hold of him and starts smashing his head against the wall, and his mom comes to the school and takes him to the hospital, and on the way to hospital, he dies. One after another after another. I turned around at the end of the session to look at his mom, and his mom was just sitting like this.
I'm not surprised.
Completely cleared the migraines. And several months, having said that completely, his mom called me about 3 months later and said, he's getting a little bit of a headache. I said, bring him back. We'll check it out. And basically, there was a little bit of ancestral trauma which hadn't come through at the first session. We released that, completely cured the migraines. So, it's often death trauma. I mean, do you want another story? My client with a back problem. Okay, because this was quite remarkable. This is another big shouty, screamy one. This lady came, and she was a magistrate. Okay, so she's a left brainer. She's all this past life nonsense. She wasn't into this, and she came with a severe back pain. And it was so bad that she was really struggling to sort of function now. It had got worse and worse. And before she was, I think in her 30s, she used to go to the gym. She couldn't get to the gym. She was putting weight on. She got depressed because she was putting weight on. The pains there. She'd even had surgery and they couldn't find anything wrong. She went under the knife. They opened her up. They couldn't see anything that was causing a problem. They stitched her back up again and sent her home with painkillers. And my experience, usually, if there's a mystery illness, it's usually past life. Her subconscious said it was 4 past lives. So when she went into trance, 4 past lives. And bear in mind, she's just laying there with her eyelids closed, and I guided her back to the first past life, which was the big one. And you may remember me sharing this story on the past life session on training course. You came on actually, because sometimes I demonstrate this and we have people coming in from the hotel staff thinking, what's going on? Is somebody being murdered in that room? So she went into the first past life and she went into the Second World War as a young male Nazi soldier. And he was part of a war team in the war, a Nazi team that was going around Europe stealing art treasures and shipping them back to Berlin. He was a very artistic young man. And that was okay, but then things started to go wrong and he got shipped off to the Eastern Front, fighting in Russia. And now he's in the thick of it. So he's had a cushy time so far. And he was terrified. So as she's laid in the chair, sharing what's happening, she was shaking and very uptight. She said this skirmish is going on, and she described one horrible battle where a young boy her age was killed, a Russian boy was killed. And then she said, we're actually now about 40 miles from Moscow, and we're near a little town called Smolonsk or Smolensk. And I think she said April 1942, or something like that. The details are in the book, I can't remember now. But I checked up later, and 40 miles from Moscow is this little town called Smolensk. And April 1942, the Nazis were bogged down there. Bear in mind, she'd never researched this stuff. And she said, we're stuck in the snow. The supplies are not getting through. They can't get the benzene. We can't get the trucks moving. There are snipers. There are little skirmishes going on. And this young man was really scared. Then he was told that behind the Nazi lines, in a village that they had captured in Russia, that there was a church with an icon in it that may be worth stealing. Go and have a look at it. And that young man then made the biggest mistake of his life, because he just hopped on a motorbike thinking it's behind the lines. Without an armed escort, he goes to this church. So he drives to the village about a mile away. And he finds the village completely quiet, nobody around, streets are deserted. And so I said, well, what's happening? So she said, bear in mind, she's laying in the chair, just in trance. She said, well, I've got off the motorbike, I found the church, and I'm now looking for and suddenly she screamed, ah! And she threw herself up in the air about a meter in the air and landed and crashed back on the chair and started to cough and to groan and to moan. And now, so what's happened? I've been shot. I've been shot, she said. Some Russian sniper has shot her and just left him to die in the snow. So she took about 20 minutes to die. And believe me, and when that bullet went in, I mean, I nearly hit the ceiling. I was so shocked. I was not expecting it. And then took about 20 minutes to die, and then she was calm. I then went back through the death several times. So each time, because we have to do this in regression, we have to go back through the traumas more than once to release the trauma in many cases. But the 4th time when the bullet went in, she just went, ah, and she was dead. So that meant we'd release the trauma. Guess where the bullet went?
Right into her back.
Exactly the same place that the problem, that the pain was coming from. So she came out of trance and she was shocked. And, you know, as you can understand, I mean, she came to me with back pain and she's ending up in a past life. But she said, it does feel better. It's a lot better already. That's weird. So she came back a week or two later. The back pain was probably 80% better. And we just cleared up the other past lives. We worked on some of the depression, the back pain, completely healed, completely cured. I had a 70-year-old gentleman in the south of England just recently, and because I do all the sessions online nowadays, and this works online. You know, people say, "How do you do this online?" It works incredibly well online, and we were talking before we came on air that how effective online therapy is. But the 70-year-old gentleman in the New Forest with a back pain, exactly the same, and I saw him a few weeks ago. He was stabbed horribly in a past life. And he went through the death. We released the death. 3 days later, he said, "I can't." He sent me an email. "I can't thank you enough. The back pain's gone." So, this is real stuff. And if this occasionally happened, you could think, well, maybe it's placebo. But no, this is happening time after time after time. So once people start to listen to some of these stories, I think they start to realize, there may be something more significant going on here. So they become less skeptical about it. But very often I just say to people, go and read Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life. Or read my new book, The Power of Past Life Regression, which is all about these stories. And you'll start to be convinced that there's something very significant going on here. And we need to look at it. So the number of people I've had with depression over the years who have got better, the depression has gone because they've worked on the emotional causes.
Absolutely. It's interesting hearing these stories. As you know, I love your stories anyway, but do you find there is very often a theme with the issues, being very, very similar, the back issues, the depression? I can remember reading or hearing someone saying something which really resonated, which it was, if you don't resolve, almost like your big issues in this lifetime, well, you're going to carry them through to the next lifetime. And in terms of your work, do you find that sort of seems to happen, that, as you say, this person kept getting some sort of bang on the head or axed on the head or whatever it was, banged his head? Is this quite common for these themes to be as they are?
Yeah, very much so. People with throat problems may have been hung in a past life. So yeah, there are these themes, the patterns, we often call them, patterns that come through from past lives, and they just tend to build and build. And one of the wonderful things now about being on Earth now is that therapy is normal. So we've got the opportunity to do this. 29 years ago, therapy was a bit strange, especially in the UK. Nowadays, it's accepted. We all have emotional baggage. We've all got issues. We all have. John Bradshaw, the father of inner child therapy, he says that only 4% of people are truly functional, which means 96% of us are screwed up in some way. And to be honest, I've yet to meet anybody of the 4%. So my belief is we've all got stuff. So let's work on it and get better. But there are often these patterns that go back over several lifetimes. I had a lad who was 16 with his mom called me. She said he's got needle phobia. And he's terrified of being at the dentist, and he needs to have some major dental work. She said, we took him a couple of days ago, and he was in such a state when the dentist is bringing the needle. He was fighting. He punched the dentist, kicked the nurse, and the dentist threw him out and said, you get this sorted or I'm not going to treat him. So can you help him? So I hope I can help him. So he's 16. Again, he doesn't have an idea about past lives. It's not his world. But he came, and as we're talking in those days in my office, he said, well, I'm not sure if it is a needle that I'm frightened of. He said, my problem is that I hate the thought of anybody touching my neck and my throat. And he said, I even hate it when people touch their own necks and throats. I get a real panic attack. So I said, really? I said, so, and he said, also people touching my wrists. He said, oh, I hate it. I go to pieces. So I said, well, if I do this, he said, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. I said, really? I said, if I go and touch my neck, he said, please don't, no, don't. And he got very tense. So I said, if I actually wanted to touch your neck right now, he said, I'd fight you. I would actually fight you. Okay, so this is a big phobia. This is not a bit of a problem. This is a severe phobia. I took him into trance. There were 2 past lives causing the problem. Both of them were deaths. In one past life, he was a young woman who had a throat slit. In the other past life, he was executed by having his head chopped off, but he was actually looking up while they brought the blade down. So we released those, and it wasn't fun. I mean, this isn't fun therapy. I often say to my clients, this is not fun. Okay, I can have fun as a person, but this is often not fun. We do see a lot of tears. We do see a lot of crying or shaking. It's unusual to have people screaming and yelling, but it occasionally happens. But if it happens, it's their way of releasing. But we released both the past lives, cleared the deaths, and at the end of the session, I brought him out of trance. How do you feel? He said, I feel so calm. I said, how do you feel about if I ask you to think about the dentist and having the injection? He said, well, it's okay. I said, how do you feel if I do this? And he said, well, it's fine. I said, how do you feel if I just touch your neck? He said, I think I'm okay. I said, well, let me just walk towards you. And as I come closer, if you want me to stop at any time, just tell me if you start getting tense. So I'm bringing my hand towards him. I started maybe 10 feet away, getting closer and closer. And then I just put my hand on his neck and he just said, no, it's fine. It's okay. End of problem. His mum emailed me some weeks later. He's been to the dentist. He's had the dental surgery. It was fantastic. Not a single problem. Thank you so much. So, you know, this is significant stuff. And I've spent 29 years shouting about how important this is. And okay, you know, people are still skeptical, and rightly skeptical, because it does sound strange. But if people sat watching my sessions online now, day after day, they become very convinced about how real this is. And, you know, the accusation, oh, everybody's just imagined it all. They've just made it up to please you. Why does a 16-year-old boy make up 2 horrible deaths to please me? Why does he do that if it wasn't real? And, you know, to say that everybody has done thousands of regression sessions over the years, that everybody's making this up, and not just me, but other regression therapists, it's too glib. It's too easy just to bat it away. If people had studied this, they'd know this is real.
Yeah. I think quite often there's a fear in even stepping into this world of, it's not modern therapy, really, hypnotherapy. It's been around for, I haven't, God knows how long, it's been around for a long time, but I sort of differentiate it just in terms of this versus sort of more, as I say, more analytical conscious mind therapy. In the same way, I know you're an EFT practitioner and an NLP. So these are, you know, people refer to these often as either holistic treatments or complementary treatments, although they're not, they stand alone on their own very, very well. But I think sometimes there is still a fear, and I think largely the fear is the unknown. And actually, when you do it, it's not bad. It's a really positive experience. And, you know, you want to build your rapport. Obviously, it's the job of the therapist to build the rapport with their client, and then you feel safe and you understand, because as you do, we do a little pre-talk so that they do feel safe and comfortable and ready to start. We don't just throw them in there. We lead them in at a good pace that they're comfortable with. It's interesting, you were just talking about the lad and different people, and, you know, something that's been a topic for me lately, I've been talking a lot about men's mental health. And I don't know what it's like so much in the UK, but I certainly, where I live in Guernsey, men's mental health is a big topic, and we have the phrase, it's okay not to be okay. And but actually, I still feel that men largely are apprehensive about addressing their mental health issues. From your perspective, is that something that you find? And again, what would you say to men who might be suffering? I'm talking probably more in terms of mental health issues than anything else. What would you say to them?
I totally agree with you. For most of my career, most of my clients are female. At least 70%, 75% of my clients are female. And I think the reason is because men don't like to admit they have a problem. It's a stiff upper lip. We've got to be hard. We've got to be tough. My experience, and this is my personal experience actually, which I think I'm not into generalizations, but sometimes there are universal issues, we call, or Virginia Satir call them universalisms, universal issues. And I have found as I've got older that I've started to realize just how sensitive I am as a person. I used to think I was a big hairy bloke playing football and, all this sort of stuff. But I've realized just how sensitive I am as a human being. And I don't think we are allowed to express that as males because of the cultural concepts and the idea that if you show that, you have an issue or you're sensitive, that it's weak in some way. I'm not honestly sure how we get over that. I really don't know how we can get over that, other than say to people, say to men, it's okay to feel your emotions. The concept of regression, the cause is locked in feelings and emotions from the past. And men are very good at pushing down the emotions and keeping the lid on our emotional pressure cooker. My belief, and this is just a belief, is that men die earlier than women as a rule. And the reason is, I believe, is that women let go of their emotions much more easily. And therefore, the cause of illness is locked in feelings and emotions. They're going to live longer. They're releasing the emotions. And men lock their emotions in, and therefore, I believe we die earlier. So I'm not sure how we change that. I mean, some of my clients are big, hairy men, who come for therapy. But they usually come because they're desperate. It's like I've now reached a desperate stage. I've got to get this sorted. Whereas a woman will acknowledge that, okay, I've got this issue. I think it can be worked on at a much earlier stage. Absolutely. It's a problem, but I don't know how we get through. I honestly don't.
I find exactly the same thing. I mean, I can remember one guy came to me, I think it was a couple of years ago now, and the point at which he came to me, and as you say, they're desperate. He was not sleeping at all. From a therapist point of view, they might have just made our job that little bit harder because, we're dealing with someone who's highly stressed. And as you feel worse, more problems build on top of problems. And so I always say, when you can, just get something addressed early, because actually you'll probably need less therapy sessions. You're going to feel better. And the other thing that I find, as you say, we are generalizing because, it's all we can do really. But I've noticed just from talking to my male clients is that sometimes they feel they sort of question that, oh, I shouldn't really be coming to you. Or it's not appropriate. I should be able to handle this, that sort of thing. So I think there's that side of it. I think they sometimes think they're coming and then we're going to tell them that they're wasting our time. That's something else that I feel very much so. And that they almost feel like, well, they're making a fuss about nothing. So I think that tends to be quite common in their thought processes. And I suppose, we're in a position where we can talk about this, and it's nice to talk to a male about it, because it can be hard to get men to talk on a forum like this openly about mental health issues. And obviously you're coming at it from both angles. You are a male and you're a therapist, but it does help. And I think the thing is to think about how you want to feel, to think you could feel better by seeking that help, couldn't they? So much better.
And I think another aspect of this is that men tend to be controllers. And they have this idea that if I'm in therapy, I'm letting go of control. And especially hypnotherapy, because they feel they're going to be under the control of the therapist because of the Hollywood myths. So that can get in the way. It's like, I don't want to let go of control. I've got to be in control. And men tend to be controllers more than women. I'm having therapy. I have therapy. I love having therapy. It's not done me any harm. I'm a lot better now. But I had a major trauma in my life last year, and so I've had quite a lot of therapy over this last year to come to terms with that, and it's helped me enormously, absolutely enormously. A year ago, I was in a really bad place. And over the course of this last year, with good regression therapy mainly, although I've had other therapies as well, I'm, a lot better. And so, I'm a passionate advocate for therapy. And as we know, how many therapists have therapy? Not that many. Most of them do therapy on other people. I'm always crowing about therapists need therapy. And in fact, a lot of my clients are therapists. I love working with therapists, actually. But yeah, so it's a question. I often share that, I'm having therapy, and therefore, this is normal stuff. And because one of the beautiful things about good therapy is it helps a person to be more balanced in their life generally. And if a person is generally more balanced in life, then that spreads out into the world. The world becomes more balanced. So, we live in an asylum. The world is an asylum. It's just insane and madness, especially right now with all the nonsense going on. So anything that a person can become more balanced, that energy of balance goes out into the collective, the world becomes more balanced. So therapy is so important. And I think everybody needs to have good therapy.
Absolutely. I agree. I think that's a fantastic note to finish on. Hopefully maybe we're doing this again, because it's always a joy to talk to you, always very entertaining. How can people follow you, check out your website? Could you just give us some contact details?
Yeah, sure. The first thing I want to promote more than anything is my free YouTube channel. So it's called Hypno for All, HYPNO, the number 4 ALL, Hypno for All. And that contains 21 free hypnotherapy recordings, no strings attached. Just go and play them for all sorts of things: anxieties, weight loss, stress, childbirth, etc. I'm so passionate about getting hypnotherapy out into the world, and they're all professionally recorded, and I get some lovely comments for them. So that's the free YouTube channel, Hypno for All. If people want to get to know me a bit better, that's a nice way in, just to play some of the recordings. My websites, I have two. The main website is lionheart-training.com, Lionheart as in Richard the Lionheart-training.com. I also have a WordPress site with lots of blogs and podcasts on. That is hypnoblogpod.wordpress.com. And I'm also on Facebook, which is the title of the book, The Power of Past Life Regression. So those are my main areas. If people want therapy sessions, then Lionheart Training is what to come through, or Hypnoblogpod. And
Fantastic. Well, we'll put those links in there underneath the video so people can check those out.
And maybe next time we can talk about some of the even more left field aspects of regression, the alien abduction regression stuff over the years that I've done. So that's always fascinating as well.
Excellent. I can't wait for that. That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Steve.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you, and thanks for having me on. Thank you.